I just hit the record button.
That's
So
fine.
yeah, I just wanted to talk to you a little bit about your book. And yeah, I really enjoyed it. I like talking to authors a lot on my podcast. And so yeah, we'll just kind of get into a couple of questions I wrote down, if that's good with you.
That sounds fabulous.
Yeah. So one of the I guess when I was reading a little bit about your bio is you're really passionate about children's spiritual formation, which I am too, being a dad of two kids. um, and just I was thinking about like my 8-year-old, and what might like, what would spiritual formation look like for an 8-year-old, and what would be, what's important about it. But I think more importantly, like, what does that look like? What are the things that parents can do? I think that might be helpful to my audience. So we're not live or anything, but people that listen have a lot of kids. So
You just froze, so I
oh
was,
no, I'm
but,
back.
but it might be my connection. That it's hard to say, but
Yeah, I know how that goes.
yeah.
Well, I think we're good now.
Yeah. Answering your question, the spiritual formation of a child is just as complex and complicated and beautiful as spiritual formation for adults. And I am not a professional in children's ministry or pastoral ministry more generally. My experience is mostly just being a mom and working with children in church, sometimes as a volunteer, and observing over the years the things that served my children well, the things that really nurtured them as they were growing up. So the normal things of being involved in a faith community and in a community that does give attention to children, and where the attitude is positive toward them. I'm really blessed now. I mean, I don't have a small child anymore. My children are soon to both be in their 40s. But I am blessed to be in a congregation here in Chicago, in my neighborhood, where little children are welcome in the service. And if they make noise, then, parents are, of course, we're all responsible to take care of our children, but nobody turns around and glares at them. Their participation and their presence is very welcomed. And I can't tell you how many times little children have run up to the front and started dancing during the music, or participated in other ways, just spontaneously wanting to be with their parent who is speaking at the mic at the moment. And they are not hauled away, they are welcome there. And so I think that's a very basic thing, is for children to be welcome in church, and to know that that Jesus is for them, that this isn't just something for grown-ups.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, and at home, there's so much, because of course, just day-to-day life, it gives you opportunity for so many conversations. If we are alert to what our children are thinking and feeling, then we can relate that sometimes to our own experience and talk to them about how God has been faithful to us in a struggle that we might have had when we were their age. But a lot of it is accepting and validating what they feel.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, you're not going to express empathy with active empathy with a child who's having a temper tantrum. that would actually be counterproductive to the child, because what the child needs is a calming presence, who will help them, learn to regulate themselves and just find out that they can control themselves. And that's very empowering too. But in a situation like Isaiah, the child in my story,
Mhm.
and his mother, when she finds out that he's feeling anxious at bedtime, then she is able to just receive that and actually help him to articulate what he's worried about.
Mhm.
And they're pretty big things, the family finances, and a lot of children live in homes that are economically insecure. And well, first of all, we don't see that a lot in children's books, and I think it's a shame
Yeah.
because it's real, and children notice and absorb their parents' worries about things
Mhm.
probably a lot more often than parents realize. But then, of course, the heartbreak of broken marriage, where the father is not living with the family,
Mhm.
and just the conflict with his older sister, who's a teenager. So he identifies, and then he's also worried just about himself, about his ability to sleep. And I'm a person with whose sleep is fragile, and so I can really identify with that as well. Because you worry about not sleeping, and that adds to the possibility that you won't sleep.
Yes. Yes.
It's a vicious cycle. So validating their feelings, acknowledging them, and even if the fear is misplaced, it's a real feeling. And we don't need to persuade our children out of their feelings, but what we want to do is help them to bring their feelings to Jesus and
Mhm.
to learn how they are loved and cared for. And then they are able to move through those difficult feelings and progressively be free of them.
Mhm. Yeah, and I
So
know
there's
that. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, there's in terms of spiritual formation, I am a huge advocate of bedtime conversation, as well as reading, maybe singing,
Mhm.
prayers. Um, I have so many memories of my children who, we were not very financially secure for a long time, and so for part of their childhood, even though they're a girl and a boy, they shared a room, bunk beds. And so, especially when they were together, I had some amazing conversations with them where they would just blurt things out that maybe they had talked with each other about. And this was a safe time, their guard is down at bedtime if you've made that a cozy and safe time for them,
Mhm.
and they are often willing to say things just before they go to sleep that they wouldn't say during the day. It's really remarkable. Um, so even though it's time consuming, and of course parents are really busy, and I don't want to put it as a burden on people, but if it's at all possible, it's just really wonderful for your children to have that time with you right before they go to sleep.
Mhm. Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. One of the things that I guess, also found interesting is, you're talking about kind of anxiety and mental health and kids. Do you feel like are we at a time where church is more open to talking about those subjects in your experience?
Um, Church talking about these subjects, I think it's maybe too soon to say. I think that
Well, yeah.
in the culture at large here in the U.S., there is more openness. Sometimes some of my friends who have struggled long-term with anxiety disorder will post about it, and then they find out that there are so many others who are also struggling with it. In terms of bringing that into church, we still need to grow in that area, I believe. I do in my church. It's not that mental health per se is the topic of sermons, but for example, my pastor, who has noted that she sometimes struggles with anxiety herself, invited me to read Isaiah and the Worry Pack for our church service, and it actually was read in the place of the sermon that Sunday. We have certain Sundays when whatever the sermon presentation is shortened because all the different language groups, we have several languages in our congregation, but we're all together, and it's a communion Sunday, and so all the children are there, so the sermon needs to be shorter. So I read the book to the whole congregation, and the children were nearby, but of course the adults were listening too. And I've been told over and over again that the book serves adults in struggling with their own worries and anxieties. Mm-hmm. So even though we didn't say this is a sermon or this is a presentation for those of you who struggle with worry, it was it was acknowledging that struggle and offering this form of prayer to bring it to Jesus in a very felt, I would say even visceral level.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I got a lot out of reading it. I read it first by myself, and then our family read it, and I think that it's true. It connects with adults and children, and I love the idea in the story of Jesus coming and taking the work, not just like carrying the worries or taking the worries off and holding that burden, but actually doing something, like the planting of the trees and the trees having fruit, and the worries become something productive. I guess that was something I hadn't thought about and want to think about more. But could you give me maybe insight in what you were trying to do? And the illustration is really great too.
Oh, the illustrations of the book are so beautiful by Pamela Rice. Yeah. Andy, I'm gonna tell you that this story was an experience. I mean, it's based on an experience. It's not word for word the experience that I had with my son when he was 10 years old. Mm-hmm. And it really happened like this, where we went through this imagined encounter with Jesus together. And yeah, I mean, we're sort of introducing a spoiler here about how the story ends. But
yeah, okay.
Not an explanation involved. So Jesus takes the worries which have shrunk down, and physically in the imagined state, they look like seeds, like peach pit sized seeds. And he tosses them out, and then later, after a conversation with Isaiah, then Isaiah notices that there are some little trees spouting over across the way, and Jesus tells him that those are going to be fruit trees. Jesus does not explain what that means, mm-hmm. And we didn't receive an explanation when we had that experience, but I'm a poet, and so I guess maybe in some ways I'm more open to open-ended ending than maybe some people are. But the promise of that experience was for my son that yes, his worries weren't meaningless, and they weren't stupid.
Mm.
They arose from love because he really cared about the people in his family.
Right.
And therefore, um, God can turn them into something fruitful. And there's a transformation that's promised. And again, it's not specified because I think we didn't know at the time how they would be transformed exactly.
Mhm.
But I can tell you that both my son and my daughter, who have gone through, they went through their own struggles, but they grew up to be people of great commitment and faith. And they are strong followers of Jesus, very committed. And I learned from them. So I guess what I'm saying is that I believe it did happen. My son is a father, and he's when he was 2 years old, the first time what he wanted to be when he grew up, he said without hesitation, a daddy.
Mm.
And he has his heart's desire in being the father of a beautiful 10-year-old child and a stepfather and also a step granddad now. And he has, his warm relationship with his father. And let's see, what else is he worried about? he was worried about the conflicts between his sister and me. And it wasn't so much because of personalities. It was really because his sister just had a lot of anger that was very expected, very normal for a child who had been intensely deprived. She was adopted after spending her first 6 months of life in an orphanage where she almost starved to death.
Mm.
And so she was severely neglected, as well as malnourished and lacking any emotional bonding during that period. So it's just normal for a child who has suffered that intensely to have, to act out in various ways as they are growing up, and trying to. It's a lot harder to become a person when you haven't had that original,
Right.
direct bonding with a parent or a caregiver who's, very committed to you. So
Yeah.
anyway, she has grown up to follow Jesus and to be to do ministry among children and youth herself. And
Mm.
she understands the kids who act out and struggle because she did that too.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Well,
the idea is just that there's some kind of fruit that's going to come from it, and we can't foresee what that's going to be necessarily. But I think it's the story ends in a kind of open-ended place where Isaiah finally is sleeping. We don't know what the transformation will be, but that's something that a child and a parent could talk about as they finish the book. What do you think might happen, that would be good in Isaiah's life, as Jesus takes care of his worries.
Mhm. Yeah, and I think it's a good thing, just saying, it's a good opener for what are you worrying about today? Because yeah, it's just such a good family. Our family will ask a lot of questions around the dinner table, um, and I just think that's a good question. And the fact that yeah, the worries are not meaningless, that there's a purpose to them. I think for me that was kind of eye-opening thought for me because I haven't had that thought. Like I'm worrying about something because I care about it, and that definitely comes through in the book. And I do agree that it's unique that thinking about finances is not something you see in kids books, but we've gotten questions like that before. um, and yeah, just about your family, because with step families, or with adoption. Like there's a lot of things that kids see, maybe a lot more than we think, and they probably do have worries and questions that we don't always think about. So I think your book opens up a lot of possibilities, and I love the openness part of it too. Yeah, I just think
It's
there's some really, really good things. So I'm really grateful that I was able to read this and continue to read this with our family.
Thank you. And I just want to affirm that it sounds like you have established that kind of openness in your family with the questions and the ability for your children to really say what they're thinking about and or what they have experienced.
Yeah,
So
I mean,
that's part of spiritual formation too, and to ask good questions and invite children to reflect on, their experience.
yeah, I mean, you read some of the Old Testament stories or New Testament stories, and yeah, I definitely have a lot of questions. So when kids are able to just be like, wait, what happened? Somebody just got swallowed by a fish for some reason. There's, it's pretty interesting, or, all sorts of stories. So, and we don't always explain them. And I think sometimes being more willing to just listen to questions and not get so offended or think we have to have all the answers or anything like that, but just like you said, to be able to affirm what those questions are, and let kids sort out what they're feeling about something. And that's probably a more honest relationship with God that we can do as adults as well. So yeah.
Yeah, and I think that when children express worry, then a lot of times our impulse is to try to fix whatever the problem is. And of course, sometimes there is a very practical thing that can be done. But it's really not a good instinct to try to just make them stop worrying, just to rebuke them for it or something. Of course, scripture is full of the phrase "do not fear," and there are places where it says, don't worry about anything. And that verse from now I'm pulling a blank on where that one comes from the
Just
one
in
of
the Sermon on the Mount.
Oh, this is from Philippians. Do not worry
Okay.
about anything, but in everything by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known to God, from Philippians 4. That is in the back of the book. But but that phrase "do not worry" is not. To me, it's an invitation. It's not a rebuke.
Yeah.
It is. Right. It is saying that we can bring, and because it says to pray, it says that we can bring those worries to God. And so that posture of invitation, I think, is what we need to take with our children. And some people say that fear or worry is sin. I don't believe so in itself. I believe that God, built in our instinct to be fearful, because it's a warning. It's a warning to us. This is a reaction to something that is or could be dangerous, and so we are on alert. And the problem is when we have to stay on alert long term, then it's not good for our bodies. So it's a matter of feeling it and letting it flow through us, responding to it, to bring it to Jesus. And then sometimes we will get some direction about something we can do to resolve the problem as we pray, or as somebody gives us good advice or something. But that doesn't come in a context of rebuke. It comes in a context of invitation and of calling us into freedom. So.
Well, I think that's good. I think I'll kind of end it with that. And Yeah, I haven't interviewed